Oi! Headhunter! What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Headhunter Hideout. I'm super excited today. I have Carolyn Betts Fleming with me, and Carolyn is the founder and CEO of Betts Recruiting, and she helps venture-backed capitalist companies scale their sales teams. How many people do you have in your team? Is it just over 100?
We did before COVID, but now we're around 70 people.
Okay, 70 people. And she's been in the business for a little bit of time. So super excited just to hear her story in recruiting, how she got started. And just if you've got questions for Carolyn, I definitely would take this time, to ask questions through the chat. And so Carolyn, welcome to the show. It's good to see you again. I know we briefly chatted last week. How is everything in Austin right now?
It's great. Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to continue our conversation, and things are great in Austin. I actually saw Chappelle and Rogan last night live, so that was super fun to get. It was their last show, so kind of cool.
And you guys, yeah, because you guys are pretty much like out of the lockdown, right? Like there's no restrictions.
There are some, you have to wear a mask indoors if you're, while you're seated. They actually COVID tested every person that went to the show, and it was outdoors. So, there are still some restrictions, but it's pretty loose, especially compared to California, where I'm originally from.
Well, why don't you? I'd love for you to just kind of introduce yourself a little bit and just share a little bit about your story, about how you got into recruitment, and how you started in the business. I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, so I am from the Bay Area. I went to the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill, and after graduation in 2003, so I'm aging myself a little bit, I moved back to the Bay, and I sold Yellow Page ads for a year, door to door in the actual book. I think a lot of people that are listening to this might not remember the book, but it was a lot of fun, and I ended up falling into recruiting. I was looking for a new job. I had cut my teeth in that very hustle, door-to-door, 100% commission sales environment. And so I saw an ad on Craigslist, and it said 100K plus, high base plus commission. And so I think I mailed my resume into this company. They called me, and it turned out it was a recruiting company. I didn't really know. And I went in, and they had been, thinking of me as a candidate. And I was confused because I thought I was applying to work at a company, and I didn't really know about recruitment agencies, especially for that. I'd worked at a temp agency in college, but I didn't realize that they had real companies that recruit full-time people. And so while I was there, I ended up getting introduced to the owner, Mark Gambarossi of the Andiamo Group, and they hired me. And so I worked there for 4 years, and it was awesome. It was such a rewarding, as a young person, 1 year out of college, falling into this really fun industry where you get to work with companies and with people to help find their next move in their career. And so from there, I moved on to Career Builder. I did enterprise sales there for about 2 years, and I started Betts in 2010. So we're on our 11th year in business. And
congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, it's been a lot of fun.
So I'm curious, like when you started in the industry, did you always plan, like, did you know right away, like, hey, I would love to start my own recruiting company? Or was that something that kind of developed over time? Like how did you get to the point of going solo, starting your own business? And did you, obviously, at 70 people, and I'm sure you've had lost a couple of people with COVID and all of that. But that's still pretty large, compared to most agencies I talk with. So I guess, did you kind of envision that the whole time, or is that something that's developed over time? Like how did that happen?
Yeah. I had thought about starting my own company in 2007, while I was at Andiamo, I took off 6 months. I remember when I graduated from college, my mom was like, "What do you want to do now?" I was like, "I want to go travel." And she's like, "That sounds fun. How are you going to pay for that?" And I was like,
Moms always come through with the best, the kind of bringing you down to earth, right?
right. I guess I'm not traveling now, but that was a goal of mine, and I had saved up a lot of money. And I remember, being on that trip thinking that, I think that getting out of the day to day and really taking time to reflect on things. So I had thought about it when I was on that trip, came back, ended up going to Career Builder. And at that time, I had actually wanted to make a transition into technology sales. So during my time at Career Builder, great company, amazing training, awesome leadership. However, I saw that in the technology world, there was the hands-on. It wasn't the same as a high touch, very consultative firm where, and the tech was obviously great at the time. So anyway, I made the decision. I still remember I talked to my dad about potentially joining his company, and he runs a manufacturing business in the Central Valley. And he said, no, you don't want to work here. You should start your own company. And when I thought about it at that point in time, I made the decision. And at the beginning, to answer your question, it was just going to be me. I decided that I would make more money, have more freedom, and just working from home by myself. But before I knew it, I had more clients than I could handle. And as we all know, that being in this business, it's all about delivering excellence. And when you have too much business and not enough time to make sure that each client is well handled, that's a problem. And so that was when I decided to start hiring people. And so, no, I at the beginning, it was not like, oh, let's build this massive international recruitment company. It was really that I thought it would be fun to run my own business, do it my own way. And then, the timing was great. Beginning of 2010, everyone, the recession was really coming to an end, and companies were starting to hire and really scale up their go-to-market teams. And so it was a lot about being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, no, I love that. Well, it's cool that you kind of went in with that mindset of like, hey, I want freedom. I want to do my own thing. I guess at what point then did you kind of start to realize, okay, this is scaling into like I don't want to say a real business, but this is scaling into something, and now I've got to get into kind of growing this business mindset. Like how far along were you when that happened?
Well, just a couple months in, one of my clients, everyone wanted more and more and more candidates. They loved the people I was sending, but they were hiring so much that, especially with the volume that happens in the sales world, and the competitive nature of finding the talent that's really talented at sales, it was, my bandwidth was low. And so it was only a couple months in, March, April, I went full-time January 2010, that I realized I had to start hiring people. And then as I hired those people, then, it basically the entire time from 2010, with, a blip in the radar last year in 2020 because of COVID, we were always hiring and growing, and we now are hiring and growing again because this reminds me a lot, or even more intense in terms of the amount of companies that are scaling up their sales teams again. So it's been a continuous growth journey of continuously hiring, training, developing talent, and, some attrition. Obviously, people leave and then you replace them, but obviously growth as well.
So when you're looking at bringing somebody in, like what are some of the characteristics that you look at, bringing new people in? And then are you bringing in like new grads, or do you look for more experienced people? Like what's your strategy for bringing people into the organization?
It's interesting, Joel, because it's changed a lot over time. So the characteristics are, grit, hustle, good interpersonal skills, people that build relationships with others naturally, also people that can follow a really great process. And, there's always that. I remember the concept that I was taught early on, the art and the science, right? The art is really understanding people, asking the right questions, getting to know them. And the science is, following the data that we know works because we've been around for a long time. So people that, and then in terms of the profile, we used to hire a lot of very junior people, train them and develop them. And now, while we still hire some of those people, we are really looking for more experienced people to come in, join our team that can take over strategic client relationships right out the gate. Maybe not right out the gate, but go through our training program and then step in and really be that consultant to the client companies that are scaling their go-to-market teams.
I hear that a lot too. And, I think for our industry, it's going to be a challenge. And I'm curious, like for bringing in new people, like with how we have it set up right now with remote work, how have you guys been adapting in terms of training and like being able to bring in people effectively? Because I just think of like the bullpen, right, where you can hear all of the conversations going on. It's such a valuable place to be because you just learn from basically attrition of all the conversations that are going around you. So how have you looked at like adapting and being able to train people as they come in? Like you mentioned, you're hiring it right now. How do you kind of remain, how do you bring people in without having those conversations? Like what have you been doing differently?
So we hired a full-time trainer, somebody who has decades in the business, who is experienced in hiring and training. And we also hired a full-time recruiter. So we have an internal recruiter for bets and then the trainer. And usually the managers were responsible for all the new hire training. And we really built a more scalable way of bringing people in and making sure they have that support. And that person is running new hire training, but also ongoing professional development for everybody in the company. So our leaders, the people that have been with the company for a long time that are still, running searches, and individual contributors will also have a roadmap for themselves of continued professional development. And I think that, with COVID, to your point, it's been hard because, you're not in the office. You don't have that same learning from each other, the same culture. And so we've adapted in that way of hiring additional people that can really help support building a team remotely.
Now, are you then hiring people nationally? Like, just for anyone who's out there, like if they're potentially looking for something new, I mean, are you open to people anywhere in the country, or like how are you guys set up to bring people on right now?
Yeah, for experienced recruiters, we're open to anyone nationally. We have an East Coast and a West Coast team, so depending on where those people are located. We have offices in Austin, Texas, and in Manhattan. Before COVID, we also had them in Chicago, Los Angeles, and California. And so basically, after this, we will be trying to get our team together, a few times a year, bring teams together for people that are open to traveling and meeting with people in person to have that hybrid. But we are absolutely now moving past those office locations to hire the best talent wherever they're located.
Awesome. Well, if you're out there and you're experienced, would you prefer like a certain type of industry? I mean, what type of industry do you, or like how do you bring people in? Do you bring them in with industry experience? Or are you willing to kind of train them up? I know you mentioned you would want that kind of client relationship experience as well. I'd love to hear more about the exact type of person that you're looking to bring in.
Honestly, if people have experience in recruiting, we can teach you, the venture-backed SaaS tech world go-to-market stuff. And that would be great if people have done go-to-market, but we're open to anybody that, having conversations at least with anybody that has solid recruiting experience, that is interested in getting into technology. But like I said, we do focus on go to market. However, if you've done tech recruiting, if you've recruited any type of people out there, we can teach the domain.
Awesome. Well, I love that. So I'm curious too. Like one of the things we talked about on Friday was the way that you incentivize people to use LinkedIn, and you're probably one of the first people that I've kind of heard that really is incentivizing your team on social media. So I'd love to hear about that strategy and kind of like why you're doing that, because obviously a lot of the recruitment owners that I talk to, it's still really heavily outbound focused and just phone calls and kind of nonstop phone call activity, nonstop email activity. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your strategy around LinkedIn and how you're incentivizing your team as well in terms of creating content.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, right? Because I started this company, as I mentioned, over 10 years ago, and my name is part of the name of the company, or it is the name. My last name is the name of the company. And really, this company is much larger than me, way larger. And what I would like for our employees is everyone to be empowered to build their own personal brand, and the power of the, the 70 plus people that work at Bets to build networks, to build relationships, to have their own voice and their own opinions, and also to share content as the company as well. And so, I think there's a large incentive for them to build their own personal brand on LinkedIn. And I also think that with that amplified voice of 70 people as opposed to one person, it really helps us get our brand out there and what we're doing, and how we're changing the future of recruiting through doing things differently. And then we also, I don't necessarily love having people do things because they're incentivized, but when we have podcast episodes, et cetera, or various different content that we've created, our compensation guide, our diversity hiring guide, we're now putting together content on the great rehiring that's happening, and we're going to be collecting data from all of our customers and people out there to talk about what that's looking like, how things have changed since 2020. Every quarter, we're going to put out reports that if our team shares them, we have these things called Bets Bucks that people get that they can use to buy, anything they want. Whether it's a vacation or some type of technology or dinner out with friends, they can do that, which is just an additional incentive to promote the behavior that we would like them to have, which is really building their own brand on LinkedIn, along with the Bets brand as well.
Well, I was going to ask too, like, how do you, like when we look at like recruiting playing out over the next, 5 to 10 years, do you think that people who invest in their brands compared to people who don't, do you see that being, a massive game changer in the future in terms of like how people recruit in the future, and like how much of a part do you think having a brand would play compared to, the rest of the outbound activity? Like, do you see that growing more and more? What are your thoughts on that?
I think so, right? So I'll give a personal example. Our company was hit very hard by COVID last year. In March, 90% of our clients put their searches on hold within a week of shelter in place. And our revenue was the best it had ever been, over 10 years, in February of 2020. The revenue also reflected that and went down 90% in April. March was still okay. And then it started going up a little bit from there. However, now we're looking at 2021 and Q4 of 2020, Q1 now, we are the busiest we've ever been. I have never seen anything like this. I've been in this industry for 17 years, and I've never seen more demand for hiring in this market, for go-to-market. And, the candidate situation is a little bit less volume there, so now, and the pendulum is completely swung in a matter of months between it being a the candidates did not have a lot of opportunities to now the employers having. And I think that because we have such a strong brand and people have known who we are for so long, that our business came back very, very quickly because we're the go-to people. You're hiring salespeople, call Bets. The amount of referrals, the venture capitalists, all the things that have been coming our way, I attribute to our brand and to the work that we've done over time, the relationships, and the consistency that we've had over time.
So I'm curious too. Do you still have like outbound KPIs? Is that something that you focus on, or are you more results based? Like how do you manage that?
And are you talking about on the candidate side or on the client side?
I would say with either, like just kind of daily activity. Like how do you monitor daily activity? And obviously with like the shift that we've had to remote work, that makes it more challenging. So how do you I guess monitor that, or how do you kind of keep that activity high? Does that make sense?
It does. And it's interesting because it's very different right now on both sides of the business. So right now, we used to have outbound KPIs for our sales team, which was the team that brought on new business. Right now, with the leads that we have coming in, they're really, responding to those people and taking the referrals and everything and making sure that we set the relationship up for success with any client that we onboard at this time. Now this shifts, right? As I mentioned, the pendulum, this is not going to be like that forever and ever. This is just the current state. And so we are trying to make sure that every single customer that comes to us that's interested is getting, it's much easier if somebody reaches out and says, say we're hiring 180 salespeople this year, to respond to that, bring them on as a client, than it is to be, and we're a little bit impacted right now. There's a waiting list to use Bets, and we're prioritizing certain companies. And I can get into that if that's interesting, of what we're prioritizing in terms of clients that we'll bring on right now. And then on the candidate side, it is, yes, very much outbound. I don't know the KPIs that we are tracking right now. We track LinkedIn, we track email, we track text messages and phone calls. And, there's a way that, we go through our own proprietary system, Bets Connect, which is a SaaS platform where companies can buy licenses and log in, and Betsers can use the platform to find candidates for our clients. We operate everything on there. But then they also use LinkedIn. They ask for referrals and do whatever they can to get the right candidates for our clients that are hiring.
I love that. Well, I love how you've embraced technology. I mean, I know, there's lots of owners that I talk to and companies that I talk to that it's all still monitored by how many phone calls are you making? What's the phone time? Which I think long term, I mean, it's hard to attract the best people when that's the mentality, because there's so much more, and obviously there's so many more tools that we have available to us. I'm curious to hear too. Like I know you mentioned you have this waiting list. I'd love to hear how you're prioritizing that and how you're managing that. And do you think that a lot of that's to do with the fact that so many companies hit that downturn last year and they let a ton of recruiters go, so now there's just almost less competition out there, or is it just purely to do with the fact that the industries that you're in are just growing like crazy?
So I think that a lot of companies, from what we saw, right? I mean, that 90% decrease in business in March that led to, a really, rough April. Most companies, COVID hit and everyone paused hiring, right? Time out. The first thing we're going to do is just let's not hire anyone while we figure out what's happening. Yeah. And then, Q3, people started feeling more confidence in hiring, Q4, et cetera. But now at the beginning of the year, especially in go-to-market, which we do, companies have their 2021 plans with their, budget of what they need to hit revenue-wise and what they need to hit hiring-wise. And because they put things on pause for months on end in 2020, now they're making up for lost time. And everyone's doing it at the same time. So, yeah, right. And it's really interesting. And then in terms of our wait list, so companies that, so traditionally we have, we have a few different business models. So the SaaS model, if you want to get on our SaaS model, there's not a waiting list. You can, we'll put you through a demo, you sign the contract. It's an annual subscription, and you log in on your own, you find the candidates, you can hire as many as you want. So there's not a waiting list for that. And then we had mostly very much a contingent model where companies would pay an engagement deposit. And some companies, aren't willing or able to pay these engagement deposits. So the companies that are saying, yep, this is top priority, we will pay the engagement deposit, they move to the top of the waiting list. Because what we've realized with our data is that for companies that do pay a little bit upfront, and it's not like crazy like some of the retained firms that are out there where you have to pay, $50K or something upfront, it's 10 to 25K, depending on what the searches are, those companies will move to the top of the list because 95% of the companies that pay engagement deposits are searches that we fill, where if they're contingency, it's more around 65%. And so, we know that we are more successful, and while we're very successful with the contingency, we also look at factors like, the hiring, the process in which they run. So are we working directly with a hiring manager? If we're working with internal recruiters, is there a process that we can easily be successful? We've been doing this for a long time, and we can sense if the company is not based in the United States and they're scaling over here. Okay, what kind of support do they have? What kind of is there a venture capitalist here in the United States that they're working with that has experience doing that? Is their compensation in line with what we're seeing with other companies? Is their culture one that we believe that we want to partner with, right? Because while the clients pay us and we have zero, there are some companies that are popping up in our industry that put people through training and charge candidates, et cetera. For us, we don't charge anybody on the talent side. It's just the companies pay to help, for us to help them find the right people on their teams. And so we evaluate, if there's things that we think will be not great for the talent that we're representing. Right now, most people want, remote hybrid. If they're in a place, they might be craving to go back to an office, but most people don't want to go to an office every day. So if you're looking right now for people that want to show up every single day in an office, it's going to be more challenging for us to be successful finding people that want to do that. And, especially with the demand that we have right now, we can let them know, hey, have you thought about hybrid? This is what we're seeing, and really having a consultative approach. And if it's, kind of my way or the highway, we'll just say, either put them on the waiting list or refer them out to another company that could maybe better help be suited to partner with them.
So if I'm hearing you right too, do you got the sales team and then you got an engagement team? Like, do you have, or is anybody full desk or like, no?
No, so how it works is, so we have our sales team, and so we have BDRs. So they take the inbound leads, and they also did outbound a lot when things were a little bit quieter, and they did such cute things too. They would do videos of themselves and pointing onto the computer of like, hey, I'm, Carolyn with Bets, and I'm noticing that you're hiring all these things on your website, and really personalizing the videos. And then the sales team gets the contracts in place and gets everything set up. And this is on our services side of the business. And then the recruiters take over the client's post contract, and they also manage those relationships. So it's not full desk, like bring on the client, sign it, manage it, recruit, but it's more full desk because they're managing client relationships and recruiting than models that we've had in the past. And so for us, when a new person starts at Bets, they'll go through training. They'll start as a recruiter only, is what we call it. And then once we think they're ready and they've kind of seen some success on the recruiter only role, then we'll give them clients. And that's usually, kind of short-lived at their recruiter only, depending on their experience and how quickly they're seeing success and getting up to speed on the recruiting thing. Because we don't like to be a company that just piles things on people. We like to, kind of crawl, walk, run to make sure that people are really, like I said, set up for success. And then on the tech side, we have our CSM team. So those people manage those clients that are leveraging the platform, make sure that those companies are really using the tech well. And then we also have people that do what we call surge recruiting. And so there's a subscription-based service that we offer where you have additional support sourcing candidates that we'll put onto the platform, tee them up. We also integrate with Greenhouse and Lever. And so those people will help get candidates scheduled, get them into the process. And then those teams, after the candidates are, past the, getting the first round interview scheduled, take the candidates from there. And so it's really just a top of funnel service that we offer. And that's a separate team from our sales, recruitment teams.
So that's kind of more like an RPO style kind of,
a little bit, yeah.
Adding onto the recruitment team. I love that. So where did you kind of come up with these types of models? Like, did you always kind of envision that, or, I mean, how did you kind of grow into that? Because to me, like, you're describing kind of, really a different approach to what I hear a lot. Obviously, I hear most of the time it's just full desk recruiting, and that's what's offered. Maybe some retained in there as well. So, how did you come up with this kind of business model? Where did you get that from?
Well, one of the, our first and leading value at Bets is people first. And I've realized that it's on us to set our teams up for success. And as the CEO of Bets, it's when we bring on clients, it is important for our team to be set up for success, to make them successful engagements and to deliver. And what I found is that, and as I mentioned, the process of going from recruiter only to taking on accounts, right? But if you are responsible for bringing on business and then managing the accounts and recruiting, it's very difficult to be successful in all of those all the time. And also, as an organization that continues to grow, we really want people to be focused and on, getting the agreement signed, having fresh new clients coming on a regular basis, making sure that process is dialed, and really allowing the recruitment team to focus on what they're best at, which is, taking that client relationship and helping find the talent. And I think it's hard to set people up for success when they have to do everything. And, I think there are a lot of companies out there that have seen a lot of success, but for us, it makes the most sense to have people really be focused and empowered to be successful doing what they love the most.
I love that. And I think, obviously there's people out here too. And I just want to go to some of the comments as well. I know, usually I go to the comments early, but we had Kevin early on, just said, "What's up from Seattle?" Kevin is a great guy. And yeah, Kevin is a really, really great guy. And you got Daniel here. He says, "Hello from Maryland." Valerie just said, "Awesome example of a company encouraging employees to build their personal brand." And I'm a huge fan of that as well. Paula just said, "Love this. Just loving the conversation." Michelle said, "I love this idea of an engagement deposit to move up to the top of the list." I agree. I think is an awesome way. And Sultan just said, "So glad to hear that business is booming." I'm curious too. Like, we talked about this a little bit as well. You've got the podcast, and I know a little bit of background on the podcast, but I'd love to hear how, kind of your vision behind the podcast, like why you started it and how you're using that as well, just in terms of overall brand awareness and how you're using that strategically within the business. I'd love to hear a little bit about the podcast as well.
Absolutely. So initially it started when things were slow and we were trying to figure out, different, obviously podcasts are around and people use them for different things, but more and more people, especially with COVID, want content to consume and they want to hear interesting conversations with people. And it's also flattering to be asked. So thank you for having me. I was very flattered when you asked me to be on this podcast. But even if people don't want to be on somebody's podcast, it's still nice to be asked. And so we made the decision to give it a try, right? We were kind of willing to do anything at that time to figure out how we were going to get our business back. And so we went for it. And the ethos of what I was trying to create was conversations with leaders that are very successful in our field, talking about the ups and downs of what they've been through. And I think for a lot of people, especially younger people out there, this COVID thing just really threw people for a loop. And most people had really been on the way up in their career and really hadn't had a lot of setbacks. And what I wanted to shine light on was, hey, like, you don't get to be, at these, starting these really cool companies or being a CRO of this organization without a few blips on the radar along the way. And so that was the ethos behind it. But then, I just really started reaching out to people in my network, people that I have a lot of respect for, and having real conversations about how they built their careers, how they built their companies, how they think about building culture and teams. And it's been great. I mean, we have, thousands upon it. I'm not Joe Rogan yet, but
not yet. Give it 6 months.
Although that is aspirational. When I saw him last night, I was like, okay, I'm going to listen to more of his pod. And, but yeah, a lot of people have really found the conversations to be interesting. It's definitely taken an interesting path where there's all different kinds of people that we're talking to, and people are really willing to open up. And I learn a lot from these conversations. And, so that's fun for me too. And I take notes during some of them because I'm like, oh, great idea. I'll bring that back to bets. And I think that it's really fun. And a lot of people that are listening to it are getting a lot out of it.
No, I love that. And I think I heard your podcast on Scott Lisa's, is it Surf and Sales? And I know Jake Dunlap connected us up as well. And Jake, he does a ton of stuff on LinkedIn. So it's cool that you, as a recruitment leader, have seen that. And I think we talked about it where, especially with the podcast, a lot of people get hung up on the downloads, or they get hung up on, a lot of things, which at the end of the day, unless you're passionate about the people that you're reaching out to, you're passionate about the conversations you're wanting to learn, it's super hard to continue the podcast because it's work and you've got to put that work into it. But I think if your vision is to, like you said, equip and impact, people, and particularly young people, I love that mission as well. Are you on Clubhouse at all? Is that something that you've thought about? What's your thoughts on that? And do you think it could be an interesting way to recruit people? Like, what are your thoughts with that? That's like the hot topic right now.
You know what? I'm not on it. I've gotten a lot of invites, and I just, for me, I'm going to be completely honest. I work a lot. I do a lot of things. I find as, CEO of a company that the expectation of excellence and leading from the front of an organization is massive. And so I like to find things that I really enjoy doing where and for me, work-life balance is really important. And so I've been, doing a lot of yoga, doing a lot of hiking, doing other people's podcasts, running my podcast, working on Bets's culture internally as well as externally. I host actually, this is probably not that popular in the world right now with COVID, but I'm hosting an in-person networking event that's very safe this week for a nonprofit I'm on the board of to educate people here in Austin about what we're doing with creating social equity through entrepreneurship for under-resourced kids in high school, students in high school, helping them start their own companies. And so, I feel like I already do so much. And this is the real deal, that I just don't want another thing right now. I'm good. I am good not doing Clubhouse. I might regret it later, and I feel like I can always sign up then. But it just, yeah. So are you doing Clubhouse? Like, what do you think?
I've committed maybe 3 to 4 hours a week at this point. I was on there a lot when I first got on there, because there was an allure to it. It's like you see people like Damon John or like Grant Cardone. You see these people, and you can end up in the same room as them, or you can end up on stage and with the ability to communicate. And I think that it's definitely an allure to it, right? And you can get into like private conversations. If Elon Musk goes on there, or Mark Zuckerberg, like, was in a room with him the other day and just got in, early because I heard it was going on, and you hear these conversations with people that you wouldn't get to hear, and then it's live too. So then you definitely feel like, oh, if I don't hear this, I'm never going to be able to hear it because it's not recorded. But I think what's interesting to me is every leader that I talk to who's in your situation, where it's like, you're running a company, and all of those things that you mentioned take time, and that should be where your focus is. And so anytime I talk to someone who's leading, it's like Clubhouse is a huge commitment, because it's live, and it's like you're putting in your time in the moment. And so I think, realistically, I mean, half an hour a week would probably be the time commitment. But in order to be on Clubhouse, it takes so much time. It's not like LinkedIn, where you can plan your post on the weekend and leave it to automatically post. And, it's a lot more of a time investment. So I think it's one of those things where, from an application standpoint in recruiting, I think it could be extremely powerful. I think there's really cool things companies could be doing in terms of, maybe getting their brand out there more, or hosting like, even on the spot interviews, like maybe having a hiring manager share for half an hour what the role is and what the position is. I think there's some cool stuff that could happen from it. But it's like anything. It's you got to be careful with like the time that you put into it. And I think a lot of people right now, they don't have a following on another platform. They're going, oh, this is a gold mine because I can pick up 1,000 followers in a week. But followers don't really matter. It's always going to come down to what's the quality of that real conversation and the real connection in the real world. So yeah, I don't know. I think it will play out.
Yeah. And the fact that it's not recorded, I think, yes, that's good for, if you say something you don't want to say or whatever it is, that it's not like out there forever. But if I'm going to ask a hiring manager to do something for us, one of our clients, to go have a conversation, I'm going to want that to be recorded and to be reused for people in the future, because people's time is very valuable, and you can only get so much of it before people kind of are like, okay, like, what else are you going to ask me to do? So anyway, not to, yeah.
No,
maybe
it's
but I'm definitely prioritizing my time in other ways than Clubhouse. So that's what I'm doing. But I know a lot of people are really enjoying it as well.
Yeah, there's a couple people who someone I've actually gotten the live show here maybe in 5 to 6 weeks. He's been doing like on the spot, like tech interview rooms, and I might get 400 or 500 people, and he's got recruiters from Facebook, Uber, like all the tech companies, and it is pretty cool. Like I have to say, like the application of seeing that is pretty cool. But again, it's like a lot of the owners that I reach out to and I have conversations with, it's like running a business. It's hard. It's super hard to find the time for it. And I think at any point, realistically, if you go on there, if the application is around for a long time, there's always time for those things in the future. So I love it. But I just wanted to get your take, see what your thoughts were on it. Well, hey, I know
I find it hard to find things to write on LinkedIn. Like, oh my God.
Like, no, a lot of people struggle with that as well.
These people out there, and everyone's so lovely, right? But I'm just like, I'm not the kind of person that just wants like write stuff to write stuff, and it's hard to come up with things that I think are relevant and worth people's time to be reading. And if I'm going to put something out there, I want it to be, interesting, meaningful, or important to me. Like I posted on LinkedIn last week, or on St. Patty's Day. Like we used to have this badass party every year at our office in San Francisco. And it was tangential to this block party that would happen. And we'd invite, our whole network in San Francisco. And it was super cool. It was live music below, and we get, hundreds and hundreds of people showing up. And I'm like, oh, it's happy St. Patty's Day. I still remember when we used to have those parties. Now, is that really changing people's lives or anything? No, but it was like, wow. Like, it's so interesting to think that last year at this time or beforehand, we were like, should we cancel St. Patty's? Should we keep it on? What's happening? And now it's like, well, we don't even have that office anymore. It's kind of crazy. So, yeah, whatever, just a little anecdote. And I imagine a lot of people that are on this podcast listening feel the same way, right? Like, what do I say, or how do I say it? And wanting to have their brand be genuine to who they are. And also, consistent enough where they get a following, but not one that's just like fabricated where you just like, at least that's how I feel. So anyway, back to you.
No, I know I'm 100% with you. And I think, part of the challenge, I think, in recruitment in general, it's really across all businesses. Like, everybody does struggle with like, what should I post? And LinkedIn's an interesting platform anyway, because it's kind of becoming a little bit more Facebook-like, and there's more personal posts out there. But it's like, how personal do I get? What should I post? What are my clients going to think? So I think there's a ton of people who are feeling that same way. Well, I'd love to kind of direct people to where they can find you, or the best place to find you. I know you've got the podcast, and we can put links to the podcast in in the comments as well, so people can find you. What's the easiest place? Like, if somebody, because look, after listening to this, if you don't want to work at Bets, I don't know what you're thinking, because like, great company, you've got a great setup, you're growing. There's a reason you're growing. You're providing great service to clients. But to me, like, the biggest thing that I heard was, I love the fact that you said, you don't want to just kind of bombard your team with like more. You want to allow them to be excellent with what they have and allow them to grow naturally, which I think it's refreshing to hear within the industry. So just huge shout out to you. But if somebody wants to be a part of the Bets team, like, what's the best way to go about that? How do you recommend people get a hold of you or your team? Like, what's the best way to do that?
My email.
A cold in-mail, is that the best way? With just a resume?
Yes, I'm looking. Hire me. No, email me, Carolyn at betsrecruiting.com. And I think there's a lot of recruitment agency owners on here, and aspiring ones. My assistant checks my emails, so she'll screenshot them to me, and then we'll introduce you to our internal recruiter, Kelly, who would then put you through the process. But I do think that, taking the initiative to reach out to me directly, why you're interested in working for Bets, why, what your experience is, I think is always really nice to start at the top, just like we ask people to do when they're doing sales. And so feel free also to link in with me on LinkedIn. I did a little cleaning house on some of my LinkedIn, so I have room to bring in new people. And so, some people that I had connected with early on that might not be relevant for our space, we got rid of some of those connections. And another thing, for people that are aspiring agency owners, one of the things that is really important to me for people that do come to Bets is ongoing mentorship throughout their career. And I've helped people, there's a woman right now in particular that just started her own company. It's not a recruiting company, but it's another company, and I'm mentoring her and helping her fundraise and do a bunch of things. So, if you are interested in learning about what it's like to build a company, you want to come work at Bets for a few years and then eventually start your own thing, that's absolutely something that I
love that.
And I'm open to, right? I mean, I did it. A lot of people have done it. So sometimes people don't know when to get started or how or what they want to do. And that's it. And did I answer?
That's huge. I just wanted to highlight too, like, one of the big objections I get with what I do, because I'm teaching companies on how to, at desk level, help recruiters build their own brand. One of the biggest objections I get, or the biggest things that I hear, is, well, what happens if they build the brand so big that it becomes bigger than the company and they want to start their own thing? And every time I think about that, I just think, isn't that at some point like what you did, like why you wanted to start your own company? Because certain people, they want to, you know, certain people are entrepreneurial and you can't really get in the way of that. And you definitely don't want to hamper something like that. So just with what you said, like, I love that mentality. And I think that to me is why your business is growing. It's why you guys are successful, is because from leadership level, you're not looking to hold people back. They want to start their own thing, even encouraging a mentorship. I can't express how refreshing it is to hear that. So I really appreciate that. And everyone who's out there, we appreciate you. I see Elaine, great to see you. Liza, great to see you as well. So welcome to everybody. And we really appreciate all of you guys out there. If you're checking this out afterward as well, find it, go back to the LinkedIn post, and we're going to have links to Carolyn's podcast. We'll have her email address on there as well. So definitely reach out and be patient, because she's got a lot of followers and obviously just a super successful business that she's running as well. So be patient in her getting back and her assistant getting back. But really appreciate everything as well, Carolyn. It's been great chatting, getting to know you. And I know so many people speak super highly of you as well. And just an honor to have you here for the last 50 minutes. So just thanks for stopping by, and looking forward to seeing more of what you guys are doing as well, and how you grow in the future. So thanks again.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun. And,
first live stream. I won. I got you on the first live stream, which is awesome.
It was easy.
It was there. It's always easy. Well, I'm going to end this broadcast.